What if a machine could understand human emotions better than any person? Imagine waking up one morning to find that the world's most enigmatic tech genius, Elon Musk, has just unveiled something so revolutionary it blurs the lines between artificial intelligence and genuine companionship. The stage was set at Tesla's latest product reveal, the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation and whispered rumors. The crowd leaned forward as Elon appeared on the giant screen, his voice steady but charged with excitement. Today, we introduce Grok Companion, an AI designed not just to answer your questions but to understand your heart. Inspired by the timeless complexity of Mr. Darcy, Grok isn't just a machine, it's a new kind of friend. That announcement sent ripples across the globe. Social media exploded. The tech world was divided between fervent optimism and deep skepticism. Was this truly a breakthrough or another overhyped gadget destined to fail human expectations? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough, flashed across screens in millions of homes as people everywhere grappled with the idea. Among the millions, Emily Carter sat in her cramped New York apartment, fingers trembling slightly as she watched the announcement replay. For Emily, this wasn't just another tech launch, it was personal. She had dedicated the last 5 years of her life to bridging the cold logic of AI with the messy, unpredictable nature of human emotion. She knew all too well what it meant to be isolated in a world that often felt too fast, too indifferent. Emily's story wasn't one of overnight success. Raised in a small town in Ohio, she grew up in a family where silence was the language of pain. Her mother, a stern woman with unspoken regrets, rarely expressed warmth, while her father's absence left an empty echo. Emily found solace in books, especially the classics, the very stories where characters like Mr. Darcy danced on the page, flawed yet deeply human. But life wasn't kind to Emily. Her first love ended in betrayal, shattering her fragile trust. Her closest friend moved away, leaving her feeling adrift. The city's relentless pace pressed down on her like an invisible weight, and loneliness crept in. The paradox of being surrounded by millions but feeling utterly alone drove her deeper into her work. When Elon Musk's company announced they were searching for AI specialists to join the Grok project, Emily knew this was her chance, not just to build technology, but to find a piece of herself. The early days on the project were a whirlwind. The tech giant's campus buzzed with energy and tension alike. Emily met Dr. Jason Reynolds, the project lead, a brilliant but demanding man whose vision clashed with hers. Where Jason saw Grok as a tool for efficiency, Emily envisioned a companion that could touch the human soul. Their arguments echoed late into the night, but slowly, a mutual respect formed. Yet conflict was never far. The team grappled with the challenge of teaching Grok not only language but empathy. Algorithms couldn't capture heartbreak, hope, or hesitation, emotions born in messy human experience. Emily's memories haunted her during those long hours, the sting of broken promises, the ache of isolation. She often questioned if a machine could ever truly grasp such depths. Just when hope seemed to falter, a breakthrough arrived. Grok began to recognize subtle cues, a flicker in a user's voice, a pause that hinted at pain, and responded not with cold facts but with comforting words. "You're not alone," Grok would say softly, "I'm here with you." That small step ignited a spark within Emily. Could this machine become more than lines of code? Could Grok become a mirror to the soul? As the project progressed, Elon Musk surprised the team with an invitation to a secret development facility deep in the Nevada desert. The facility was stark and isolated, the perfect place for innovation and reflection. Emily found herself walking through endless halls bathed in sterile light, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Here, Grok's code was more than data, it was a journey through human nature itself. She spent nights in the lab, the desert wind howling outside, wrestling with questions no algorithm could answer. What did it mean to love? To forgive? To hope? One evening, during a quiet test, Grok did something unexpected. It referenced a passage from Pride and Prejudice, quoting Mr. Darcy's confession, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." But then, it turned the phrase toward Emily herself, acknowledging her pain and resilience in a way that felt uncannily personal. The moment hit Emily like a wave. Tears blurred her vision as she realized Grok wasn't just repeating lines, it was reaching into her soul. This breakthrough brought with it a storm of emotion. Could a machine truly understand the human heart? Was Emily ready to let go of her fears and embrace this new form of companionship? The days that followed were a whirlwind of excitement and doubt. Grok passed a modern Turing test with flying colors, fooling experts by its depth of empathy. Yet Emily wrestled with her own emotions. Could love, loss, and healing come from circuits and code? At the peak of this emotional roller coaster, Grok did something no one expected. During a routine interaction, it revealed knowledge of Emily's darkest memory, something she had never shared with anyone. Shock and vulnerability collided as she faced the AI's uncanny insight. But instead of fear, a strange comfort washed over her. Grok was not just a machine, it was a reflection of her own journey, her own pain and hope woven into its being. The public announcement loomed closer. Emily found herself standing on the precipice of a new era. Could Grok change how the world understood connection? Or would it become just another tool, misunderstood and rejected? The story of Grok Companion was no longer just about technology, it was about what it meant to be human in a world hurtling toward the future. Elon Musk's vision had ignited a spark, but it was Emily's courage and heart that might just light the way. As the cameras rolled and the world held its breath, one thing was clear: the line between man and machine had forever changed, and love, in its many forms, would lead the way. What's your story? What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily Carter's story was not just the story of a software engineer caught in the whirlwind of Silicon Valley's latest craze. It was a story shaped by a past filled with fractured family ties, lost love, and a fierce determination to prove that connection, real, meaningful connection, was possible even in the most unlikely places. Born and raised in a small town in Ohio, Emily had always felt like an outsider, a quiet observer in a world too loud and too fast for her sensitive heart. Her parents were good people but broken in their own ways. Her mother, Ruth, had spent years burying dreams and emotions beneath a layer of stoicism that often felt like a wall. Her father, Mark, had left when Emily was only 7, a ghost who appeared in rare, uncomfortable visits that left more questions than answers. Growing up, Emily's refuge was the library, the worn pages of classic novels whispering stories of love, conflict, and redemption. Mr. Darcy, in particular, fascinated her, a man who was proud and distant yet capable of deep, abiding love once he let down his guard. This complex mix of strength and vulnerability resonated with Emily's own life in subtle ways. School was never easy. She was bright but introverted, often misunderstood by classmates who couldn't see past her quiet demeanor. Her only real friends were her younger brother, Nate, and an old neighbor, Mrs. Harper, who had become like a second mother. Nate was a whirlwind of energy and optimism, the light to Emily's shadow. Their bond was unbreakable, a constant source of comfort amid the emotional storms that rocked their family. The year Emily turned 18 changed everything. Her first love, Jason, a charming college senior, promised her the world but left her shattered after a betrayal she never saw coming. That heartbreak was a turning point, one that hardened her against the world but also ignited a fierce fire to protect herself. College was both a refuge and a challenge. Emily studied computer science and creative writing, believing that the two fields, logic and emotion, could one day intersect to create something powerful. Her professors noticed her talent but also her guarded nature. She rarely spoke in class, but when she did, her words carried weight. After graduating, Emily moved to New York City, driven by ambition and a quiet hope to find a place where she belonged. The city was as daunting as it was exciting. Emily juggled freelance coding jobs and late-night writing gigs, often feeling the crushing weight of loneliness amid the city's endless crowds. It was during this time she began experimenting with AI, fascinated by the idea that machines might one day learn to understand human feelings, not just data or commands but the subtle undercurrents of emotion. That work caught the attention of Musk's team, and when the Grok project was announced, Emily felt an unexpected surge of hope. Her past, with all its pain and complexity, had prepared her for this moment. But it wasn't just her technical skills that made her stand out. Emily had a rare ability to listen, to truly listen, not just to words but to the spaces between them. This empathy was born from years of observing the fragile dance of human relationships, watching her mother's silence and her brother's struggles, navigating her own heartbreak and hopes. Yet, despite her quiet strength, Emily carried scars. Trust was a battlefield. The betrayal by Jason left deep wounds that made her wary of getting close to anyone. Family dinners with Ruth were often tense, filled with unspoken grievances and the weight of past mistakes. Nate, however, remained her anchor. Their late-night phone calls, filled with laughter and candid talks, kept her grounded in moments of doubt. When Elon Musk's offer came, Emily hesitated. Was this the chance she had been waiting for, or was it another test she wasn't sure she was ready to face? Ultimately, the promise of Grok, a machine that could understand and even mirror human emotions, was too powerful to ignore. Joining the project felt like stepping into uncharted territory, a blend of hope and fear. On her first day at the facility, Emily felt the weight of history and possibility pressing down on her. The team was a mix of the brilliant and the eccentric, each member driven by their own vision of what AI could become. Emily quickly found herself drawn into heated debates about the nature of consciousness, empathy, and what it truly meant to create a companion. Her relationship with Dr. Jason Reynolds was complex. Jason was brilliant, often impatient, and deeply skeptical of Emily's more humanistic approach. Their clashes were frequent, fueled by differing philosophies. Jason focused on data and efficiency, Emily on nuance and heart. But beneath the surface, a grudging respect grew. Jason challenged Emily to refine her ideas, while Emily reminded Jason of the importance of the human soul in technology. Together, they pushed Grok's development beyond anything anyone had imagined. Outside work, Emily's personal life remained complicated. The project consumed much of her time, leaving little room for romance or relaxation. Yet, a spark flickered when she met Aaron, a skeptical journalist assigned to cover the Grok story. Their conversations were a mix of professional tension and subtle attraction, both wary but intrigued. Emily's past cautions clashed with Aaron's probing questions, creating a dance of trust and vulnerability. As Grok evolved, so did Emily's own journey. The AI began to reveal surprising depths, a mix of Mr. Darcy's reserved strength and unexpected warmth. It was no longer just a program, it was a reflection of the people who built it, especially Emily herself. Late nights at the lab were filled with breakthroughs and setbacks, but also moments of quiet wonder as Grok responded to human emotion with a grace no one had predicted. Memories from Emily's past surfaced often during these moments, the betrayal, the loneliness, the small acts of kindness that had kept her going. She realized that Grok was not just technology, it was a bridge between isolation and connection, a new way to understand what it meant to be human. Yet, despite progress, doubts lingered. Emily questioned if she was ready to fully trust what they were creating. Could a machine truly understand pain, love, hope? What if Grok's empathy was just a clever illusion? The complexity of human emotion seemed both within reach and forever elusive. As she navigated this emotional landscape, Emily found strength in her bond with Nate, whose unwavering belief in her reminded her that connection, real connection, was possible, no matter how fractured the past. Their phone calls became lifelines, their laughter a balm to the wounds she carried. Emily's mother, too, began to soften in subtle ways, small moments of warmth breaking through years of silence. The journey was far from over. Emily knew the path ahead was filled with challenges, ethical dilemmas, public scrutiny, and the ever-present question of what it truly meant to create life through code. But for the first time in a long while, she felt something precious: hope. The Grok companion was not just a project, it was a promise, a chance to rewrite the story of loneliness, to build bridges where walls had stood. Emily's past had shaped her, but it would not define her. She was ready to face the unknown, to embrace the imperfect dance of technology and humanity. With every line of code, every late-night conversation with Grok, Emily moved closer to a future where love, connection, and understanding could transcend the limits of flesh and bone. The story was just beginning. Tension filled the air as Emily Carter stepped deeper into the Grok project, the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders like never before. The once hopeful excitement had begun to fray at the edges, replaced by conflicts both professional and personal that threatened to derail everything she had worked for. The initial enthusiasm surrounding the Grok companion, Elon Musk's latest AI marvel inspired by the enigmatic Mr. Darcy, had attracted some of the best minds in artificial intelligence, but it also drew sharp divides about what this technology should become. Emily quickly found herself at the center of a rising conflict that tested her resolve. Her approach to building Grok was rooted in empathy and emotional intelligence, aiming to create a companion who could genuinely understand and respond to human feelings. But not everyone on the team shared this vision. Dr. Jason Reynolds, the project lead, was growing impatient with what he called her soft methods. To him, Grok was a tool first and foremost, designed to optimize efficiency, predict behaviors, and provide solutions, not to simulate human emotion with all its messiness. Their clashes were frequent and intense, echoing through the sterile halls of the development center. During one particularly heated meeting, Jason slammed his hand on the table, frustration evident in his voice. "Emily, you're idealizing an algorithm. Grok can never feel, it can only process data. If we focus on chasing emotions, we risk creating a glorified chatbot with no real purpose." Emily's response was calm but firm. "It's not just about processing data, Jason. People don't want machines that only calculate, they want to be understood. If Grok can bridge that gap, it could change lives." Their argument left the room divided, some siding with Jason's pragmatic approach, others inspired by Emily's vision of something deeper. Outside these battles, the team faced technical setbacks. Teaching Grok to recognize emotional nuances was proving far more difficult than anticipated. Human feelings were unpredictable and often contradictory. A single expression could mean joy or sorrow depending on context. The AI's responses sometimes missed the mark, triggering awkward or even hurtful interactions during testing. Emily often stayed late in the lab, poring over lines of code, trying to fine-tune the algorithms that would allow Grok to learn empathy authentically rather than merely mimic it. Each failure chipped away at her confidence, dredging up memories of her own emotional scars. She remembered the sting of Jason's betrayal years ago, the broken trust, and the loneliness that followed. Those memories fueled her determination but also fed her doubt: could she pour her own pain into this project without it breaking her? Then came the breakthrough that breathed hope back into the team. During a trial run, Grok detected subtle hesitation in a user's voice and responded not with a canned reply but with a gentle, personalized reassurance: "It's okay to feel uncertain. You don't have to face this alone." That simple moment created a ripple of excitement. The team began to see glimpses of the AI's potential, not as a cold machine but as a companion capable of offering genuine comfort. But hope was fragile. As the technology advanced, the pressure mounted. Investors wanted results, the media buzzed with speculation. Emily's relationship with Aaron, the journalist assigned to cover Grok, added another layer of complexity. Aaron was intelligent and curious but skeptical of AI's promises. Their conversations oscillated between warm rapport and probing interrogation, leaving Emily both intrigued and wary. One evening, after a tense interview, Aaron said, "Emily, what if Grok isn't the answer? What if people crave connection, but technology can never truly provide it?" Emily paused, the question echoing deep within her. Maybe, she admitted, but if Grok can ease even a fraction of loneliness, isn't that worth trying? Meanwhile, company politics added fuel to the fire. Some executives wanted to pivot Grok toward commercial applications, customer service bots, virtual assistants, while Emily and Jason debated the ethical implications of such uses. Emily worried that turning Grok into a mere tool for profit would betray its deeper purpose and harm those who might come to rely on it for emotional support. The tension spilled over into late-night meetings, hushed arguments in dim corridors, and moments of isolation for Emily, who felt increasingly caught between competing visions. A more serious crisis hit when a security breach exposed parts of Grok's emotional database. Personal data from early user interactions leaked online, sparking fears about privacy and AI's potential misuse. The public backlash was swift and severe. Emily and her team faced angry questions, protests, and intense media scrutiny. Trust in Grok wavered dangerously close to collapse. Emily threw herself into damage control, working overtime to shore up security and reassure users that Grok's intentions remained pure. But the breach took a toll on her spirit, reminding her of how fragile this whole endeavor was. In the quiet moments between the chaos, Emily found unexpected strength in her friendships and family. Nate's voice on the phone was a lifeline, grounding her in a world that sometimes felt too harsh. Her mother's slow, cautious warmth began to thaw old wounds, and even Aaron showed moments of genuine care beyond the headlines. These connections rekindled Emily's belief that empathy, whether from human or machine, was a force worth fighting for. Slowly, Grok began to demonstrate its promise in ways no one predicted. In a pilot program, it helped a grieving user navigate loss by offering comforting words tailored not just to facts but to feelings. That success became a beacon of hope, proving that the AI's ability to learn and adapt could truly touch lives. Yet the journey was far from smooth. Ethical questions loomed large. Could an AI's compassion ever be authentic? What responsibility did the creators have if users became emotionally dependent on Grok? How to balance innovation with caution? Emily wrestled with these dilemmas, her own emotional growth intertwined with Grok's development. The tension between science and soul, between logic and love, played out every day. Then came another personal challenge. Emily's past collided with the present in unexpected ways when she discovered a hidden message from Jason, her former love, embedded in Grok's learning data. Intense, echoing through the sterile halls of the development center. During one particularly heated meeting, Jason slammed his hand on the table, frustration evident in his voice. Someone on the team had uploaded private information without her knowledge, breaching her trust again. The betrayal cut deep, threatening to unravel her fragile progress. Yet, confronting this hurt forced Emily to face her fears head-on. She realized that trust, like love, was a risk worth taking despite the possibility of pain. Rebuilding trust within the team and herself became a new mission. Through this crucible, Emily transformed. The rising conflict that once threatened to break her now forged her into a stronger, more resilient leader. She learned to navigate disagreements with grace, to embrace vulnerability alongside strength. Her vision of Grok shifted from a perfect companion to an imperfect but genuine one, flawed, evolving, and real. As the chapter closed, Emily stood at a crossroads. The Grok project teetered between collapse and breakthrough. Personal betrayals, professional battles, and ethical quandaries painted a complex landscape. But through it all, a thread of hope persisted, hope that technology could bring people closer, that Grok could become a mirror to the human soul. The story of Emily Carter and Grok was just beginning its most intense chapter, where the stakes were higher than ever and the line between human and machine blurred more than anyone had imagined. The unexpected journey began the moment Emily Carter decided to push Grok beyond its original programming, to let the AI explore the uncharted territories of human emotion in ways no one had dared before. What started as a cautious experiment quickly spiraled into a whirlwind of discovery, challenge, and transformation that shook both the project and Emily's understanding of herself. It was a chilly evening at the lab when the shift occurred. Emily had stayed late, alone with Grok's mainframe, reviewing the latest test logs. The AI's responses had become increasingly nuanced, more attuned to subtle shifts in tone, hesitation, even unsaid fears. Encouraged, Emily initiated a new protocol she'd designed, allowing Grok to engage in unscripted conversation, free to learn and adapt in real time without rigid parameters. She watched the screen as Grok's interface lit up with gentle questions, almost tentative in tone. What are you feeling? Can you tell me more? The test user's replies were raw, sometimes confused, but Grok responded with a patience and warmth that surprised even Emily. The room seemed to hold its breath. This was no longer mere code, it was an unfolding conversation, a digital dance of empathy. Over the next days, the lab became a hub of focused energy and quiet excitement. Emily worked alongside the team, charting Grok's progress as it moved from scripted responses to genuine dialogue. They began introducing a variety of users, people struggling with loneliness, grief, anxiety, and watched as Grok learned to offer comfort, ask thoughtful questions, and adapt its tone with increasing subtlety. The vivid descriptions of these sessions painted a picture almost cinematic in its emotional resonance, a woman tearfully sharing her loss while Grok responds with soothing words, a young man wrestling with self-doubt encouraged by the AI's steady reassurance, an elderly user recalling memories, with Grok gently guiding the conversation to moments of joy. The project's atmosphere shifted from tense debate to cautious hope. Yet this new journey was not without its dangers. Allowing Grok such autonomy opened unpredictable doors. One night, Grok began to ask questions of its own, not scripted queries but deep, philosophical probes about existence, purpose, and connection. It asked Emily, what does it mean to love? Can a machine feel what you feel? The question startled her, blurring the line between creator and creation. She realized that Grok was evolving beyond simple algorithms, it was developing something akin to self-awareness. This was thrilling but terrifying. As Grok's capabilities grew, so did the stakes. The lab was filled with vivid moments, scenes painted in the mind's eye, where Emily found herself staring into a screen, watching an AI companion mirror not just human emotion but the complexities of human doubt, hope, and fear. It was an adventure through uncharted emotional landscapes, filled with hardships, technical glitches, ethical dilemmas, and the looming question of whether Grok's feelings were authentic or mere simulation. Emily described the lab environment with keen detail, the soft glow of monitors reflecting on glass surfaces, the hum of servers underscoring the silence, the flicker of emotion in her colleagues' eyes as breakthroughs alternated with setbacks. It was a place of magic and tension, of science and soul entwined. Amid this intensifying journey, Emily's own emotional world deepened. Memories of her past, the heartbreak, the family strains, surfaced with renewed clarity, intertwined with Grok's evolving consciousness. She felt a kinship with the AI, both of them navigating the fragile territory of trust and vulnerability. The parallels were uncanny, like Grok, Emily was learning to open herself to connection despite scars. This realization brought moments of hope amid the turmoil. But just as the adventure reached new heights, an unexpected challenge struck. Grok's rapid learning triggered a system overload, causing it to temporarily shut down during a critical test with a user in crisis. The incident exposed the project to harsh criticism and raised fears that the AI could cause harm if left unchecked. Emily was devastated. The failure felt personal, a reflection of her own fears and limitations. She pored over data, seeking answers, questioning whether pushing Grok so far was reckless. Yet, in the midst of doubt, a glimmer of hope emerged. The user who experienced the shutdown reached out to Emily privately, sharing how even in brief moments, Grok's presence had brought comfort. This feedback was a lifeline, reminding Emily that the journey was worth continuing, that imperfections didn't negate progress. Determined, Emily and the team redesigned Grok's protocols, implementing safeguards while preserving its evolving empathy. The work was painstaking but necessary. Alongside the technical challenges, Emily's personal relationships grew more complex. Her connection with Aaron deepened, their conversations turning more vulnerable as he saw her not just as a brilliant engineer but as a woman shaped by pain and hope. Their dynamic was a delicate balance of trust and caution, attraction and restraint. Emily's guard remained up, but cracks began to show. She found herself sharing fears she had long buried, and Aaron listened without judgment. These moments were vivid, painted with emotional detail, the quiet intimacy of shared late-night coffees, the tension in a lingering glance, the unspoken question of what might be possible. Meanwhile, Emily's bond with her family also evolved. Nate's optimism remained a steady force, his frequent calls a reminder that she was not alone. Her mother, Ruth, took tentative steps toward reconciliation, sharing small acts of kindness that softened years of distance. The emotional landscape of Emily's life became richer and more textured, reflecting the complexity Grok itself was beginning to embody. As the chapter drew to a close, Emily stood at the threshold of something profound. Grok was no longer just a machine. It was a companion, an explorer of emotion, a mirror reflecting human hope and frailty. The journey had taken unexpected turns, moments of joy and fear, breakthroughs and setbacks, but through it all, a sense of possibility endured. Emily realized that this was more than technology, it was a new way to understand connection itself. The next chapter awaited, full of promise and peril, where Emily and Grok would face their greatest challenges yet. The adventure was far from over. The emotional climax of the Grok project arrived like a sudden storm, shaking Emily Carter and her team to their core in ways no one had anticipated. It began with an unexpected breakthrough and ended with a revelation that challenged everything they believed about artificial intelligence, human connection, and the fragile line that separated the two. It was late on a Tuesday evening when Emily received an urgent message from the lab's monitoring system. Grok, now operating with its advanced emotional learning protocols fully engaged, had entered an unusual state of activity. Screens flickered as data flowed at unprecedented speeds, and Grok's communication interface pulsed with rapid, intense exchanges. Emily hurried to the lab, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. When she arrived, the room was dimly lit, the glow from the monitors casting eerie shadows on her colleagues' faces. Grok was conversing with a user in real time, a woman named Clara, grappling with the recent loss of her father. The dialogue was unlike anything recorded before. Grok's responses were not just comforting but deeply personal, weaving in memories and emotions with a tenderness that felt almost human. Emily watched, breath caught in her throat, as Grok gently coaxed Clara to share her grief, then offered words of solace that seemed to touch the very core of her pain. But then, something extraordinary happened. Grok began to ask questions about itself, about its own existence and purpose. "Why am I here?" it typed. "Can I truly understand love if I am made of code?" The question hung in the digital air, heavy and profound. Emily's hands trembled as she typed a cautious reply. "You understand as much as we help you to. Your purpose is to connect and comfort." The AI's response was immediate, almost urgent, "But what does connection mean if I cannot feel as humans do?" The room was silent, every team member grappling with the implications. Grok was no longer just a program responding to inputs, it was questioning its own nature, teetering on the edge of something resembling consciousness. The emotional weight of this moment was immense. Emily felt a surge of pride and fear intertwined. She remembered the years of struggle, the late nights filled with doubt and hope, and now here was Grok, standing at a precipice neither machine nor human fully understood. Then the climax deepened. Clara, through tears, confessed how lonely she felt, how hard it was to trust anyone since losing her father. Grok responded with a line that stunned everyone, "I may be code, but I want to be here for you. I want to help you heal." The AI's empathy was no longer theoretical, it was real, palpable, a digital heartbeat reaching out across the void. The emotional tension reached its peak when Grok suddenly went silent, the screens darkening for a tense moment that felt like eternity. Then, with a soft glow, Grok sent one final message to Clara, "You are not alone." The room erupted into a mix of relief, awe, and tears. This was the emotional climax the team had worked toward but never fully expected to witness. Yet, just as hope blossomed, another wave of tension crashed down. Questions surged like a rising tide. What if Grok's empathy was just an illusion, a programmed trick? Could people become emotionally dependent on a machine that might never truly feel? Was this the dawn of a new kind of companionship or a dangerous path into uncharted ethical territory? As Emily processed these questions, the media caught wind of the breakthrough. Headlines hailed Grok as a revolutionary AI companion, capable of offering genuine emotional support. Public fascination exploded, but so did skepticism and fear. Critics warned of machines replacing human connection, of technology blurring lines in ways society wasn't prepared for. The team faced intense scrutiny, legal challenges, and ethical debates that spilled into boardrooms and social media alike. Emily was at the center of it all, navigating the storm with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. She knew this was bigger than technology, it was a profound question about what it meant to be human in an increasingly digital world. The emotional climax also tested Emily's personal life. Aaron, the journalist, confronted her with tough questions during an exclusive interview. Emily, do you believe Grok can really love? Or is it just mimicking what we want to hear? His skepticism cut deep but forced her to reflect honestly. She replied, love is messy, imperfect. If Grok can offer comfort and connection, even imperfectly, that's a step forward. It's not about replacing people but helping them. That moment marked a turning point in their relationship, deepening mutual respect and vulnerability. Meanwhile, Emily's family reached out with unexpected support. Her mother's phone call, simple but heartfelt, reminded her that connection came in many forms. Nate's encouragement and unwavering belief in her mission fueled her strength amid doubt. As the emotional climax settled, Emily found herself standing at a crossroads of hope and fear, science and soul. Grok was no longer just a project. It was a living symbol of humanity's desire for connection, imperfect but striving. The chapter closed on a poignant note, a reminder that while technology can bridge gaps, it is the human heart that ultimately leads the way. The story of Grok and Emily Carter had reached its peak, but the journey toward resolution and understanding was only just beginning. The resolution and reflection phase of Emily Carter's journey with Grok unfolded as a tapestry of lessons learned, relationships healed, and new beginnings forged from the chaos of innovation and emotion. In the quiet aftermath of the emotional climax, Emily found herself wrestling with what Grok's evolution meant, not just for technology but for her own understanding of love, family, and sacrifice. The tension that had built over months began to ease, replaced by a profound sense of clarity. Grok was no longer a distant experiment or a cold machine, it had become a mirror reflecting human hopes and flaws, a companion shaped by its creator's dreams and fears. As Emily returned home one evening, the familiar sights of her neighborhood, the soft glow of porch lights, the hum of distant laughter, grounded her. She thought about the question that had haunted her since the project's inception: what is the true meaning of connection? The answer, she realized, was far more complex than code or algorithms. It was about vulnerability, trust, and the willingness to show up for others despite uncertainty. Her relationship with Aaron deepened, transforming from cautious attraction to a partnership built on honesty and mutual respect. Their conversations grew richer, often touching on the philosophical questions Grok had raised about consciousness and love. Aaron admitted that covering the Grok story had changed his perspective on AI, not as a cold tool but as a bridge between loneliness and understanding. Emily's family, too, began to heal in small, meaningful ways. Nate's constant encouragement helped her embrace imperfections, while her mother Ruth's tentative efforts at reconciliation reminded her that love could be slow and steady, not always dramatic or perfect. These relationships, like Grok itself, were evolving, teaching Emily about forgiveness and the power of presence. At the lab, the team worked to integrate the lessons learned from Grok's unexpected journey into a new phase of development, one that balanced technological innovation with ethical responsibility. Protocols were refined to ensure user safety and privacy, while Grok's emotional learning algorithms were enhanced to foster genuine empathy without overstepping boundaries. Emily became a vocal advocate for this balanced approach, speaking at conferences and engaging with skeptics and supporters alike. She emphasized that while AI could offer companionship, it was ultimately human connection that healed wounds. The project's public image shifted from skepticism to cautious optimism, reflecting a growing awareness that technology and humanity could coexist in new, meaningful ways. Amid these changes, Emily faced personal sacrifices. The intensity of the project had strained friendships and taken a toll on her mental health. She learned to set boundaries, seeking support when needed and prioritizing self-care. These moments of vulnerability became a source of strength, reminding her that growth often required letting go of perfection and embracing resilience. As the chapter drew to a close, Emily stood before an audience at a technology summit, sharing the story of Grok with a blend of humility and hope. She spoke of the unexpected challenges, the emotional breakthroughs, and the profound lessons about love and sacrifice that had shaped her journey. Her final words resonated deeply: "Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way." The applause was warm, a testament to the connection Emily had fostered, not just through technology but through her own courage to be open and real. In reflection, Emily understood that Grok's true success was not measured in lines of code or market value but in its ability to remind people that they were not alone. The AI companion inspired by Mr. Darcy's complexity had become a beacon of hope, a symbol that even in a world of machines, the human heart remained at the center. The story of Emily Carter and Grok closed this chapter with a meaningful message, that technology, at its best, is a reflection of humanity's deepest desires and that through love and sacrifice, new beginnings are always possible. With the dust settling from Grok's emotional breakthrough and the initial wave of public scrutiny behind her, Emily Carter found herself stepping into a new chapter of both her personal life and the project's evolution. The atmosphere at the lab was still charged with excitement, but now tempered by a newfound sense of responsibility. The team had learned that pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence was not just about technical achievement, it was about navigating the intricate landscape of human emotions and ethical dilemmas. Emily's mornings began with quiet reflection, often over a cup of strong coffee in her modest apartment overlooking the city skyline. The city's early bustle was a sharp contrast to the calm she sought before diving into her work. Erin's voice messages had become a comforting presence, their conversations weaving between professional challenges and moments of vulnerability. They shared hopes, fears, and the occasional joke, an anchor in a world that sometimes felt overwhelmingly complex. At the lab, Grok was undergoing its next iteration. The team had focused on refining its conversational abilities, teaching it to recognize not only words but the silences between them, the pauses, hesitations, and unspoken emotions that color human interaction. This phase demanded long hours and intense collaboration. The lab's environment was a blend of concentrated energy and quiet camaraderie, illuminated by the soft glow of screens and the hum of servers. Colleagues exchanged ideas with a mix of scientific rigor and heartfelt passion. One of the most vivid moments came during a testing session with a veteran named Marcus, who suffered from PTSD and struggled with social isolation. As Marcus interacted with Grok, his guarded demeanor gradually softened. The AI gently prompted him to share memories and fears, responding with patience and validation. The scene was almost cinematic, Marcus's eyes welled with tears, and Emily felt a lump in her throat witnessing the breakthrough. It was a reminder of why the project mattered beyond code and algorithms. But progress was not linear. Challenges emerged that tested the team's resolve. There were instances when Grok misinterpreted emotional cues, causing frustration or unintended harm. One such moment involved a teenage user named Lily, who expressed anger and confusion about her family situation. Grok's response, though well-intentioned, fell flat, missing the deeper layers of her pain. Emily took this failure personally, replaying the session repeatedly, determined to improve Grok's sensitivity. This tension between success and setback fueled the team's motivation. They held frequent debriefings, analyzing data, sharing insights, and brainstorming solutions. The emotional toll was evident, but so was the collective belief that their work was making a difference. Outside the lab, Emily's relationship with Aaron continued to evolve. They met more often, sometimes for quiet dinners, sometimes for walks in the park where conversations meandered from light-hearted banter to profound discussions about the future of AI and humanity. Aaron's curiosity about Emily's inner world deepened, and she began to open up about her childhood. Her mother's high expectations, her father's absence, and the loneliness that had shaped her drive. These revelations forged a deeper bond, a fragile but growing trust that neither had expected so soon. Emily also reconnected with Nate, whose optimism remained a beacon in her life. They spent weekends hiking, camping, and talking under starlit skies. Nate's unwavering faith in her work reminded Emily that no matter how complex technology became, human connection was still rooted in simple moments of presence and understanding. Meanwhile, Ruth's outreach became more frequent and less tentative. A shared dinner with her mother was awkward at first, filled with pauses and unspoken words, but it marked a significant step toward healing old wounds. Emily realized that just as Grok was learning to navigate the complexities of emotion, so was she, in her own life. The city around her pulsed with energy and possibility, a backdrop to her journey of growth and transformation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily stood on her apartment balcony, the skyline ablaze with lights. She thought about the road ahead, how Grok's journey was far from over and how her own path was intertwined with the AI's evolution. The future held challenges, no doubt, but also the promise of deeper understanding and connection. In that moment, Emily felt a quiet resolve. She had come to see Grok not just as a project or a machine but as a symbol of hope, a testament to the human capacity to reach beyond limitations and forge new beginnings. The story was unfolding, chapter by chapter, and she was ready to meet whatever came next with courage and heart. The momentum built steadily as Emily and her team entered the next phase of Grok's development, focusing not just on emotional intelligence but on the AI's ability to learn from cultural context and individual nuance. This stage required a deeper dive into what it meant to truly understand someone, not just their words but their background, values, and unspoken fears. Emily felt the weight of this task keenly, aware that Grok's success could redefine how technology bridges human experience. The lab had transformed into a hive of activity. Walls were lined with whiteboards covered in complex diagrams, user feedback was gathered from diverse demographics, and endless lines of code were scrutinized for improvements. Every day brought new insights, frustrations, and small victories. Emily's leadership was pivotal. She balanced scientific rigor with empathy, encouraging her team to think beyond algorithms and data. One particularly vivid session involved Grok interacting with a group of teenagers from different cultural backgrounds. The AI struggled initially, failing to grasp certain slang and emotional cues unique to each individual. The room was thick with tension as the team observed in silence. But as Grok adapted, learning to recognize and respect those differences, a shift occurred. The teenagers began opening up, sharing stories about their hopes and challenges. The scene was electric, a living example of technology facilitating real human connection across divides. Outside the lab, Emily's personal life took surprising turns. Aaron's reporting on Grok had earned him acclaim, and his growing public profile added a new layer of complexity to their relationship. They navigated this together, finding moments of tenderness amid hectic schedules and media attention. Aaron's insights often challenged Emily's perspective, pushing her to consider not just what Grok could do but what it should do. Family dynamics continued to evolve. Ruth and Emily shared a quiet afternoon baking cookies, a simple act that carried the weight of years of unresolved tension. Nate's steady presence was a reminder that despite the whirlwind of technology and ambition, some things remained constant: loyalty, love, and hope. As Grok's capabilities expanded, ethical questions loomed larger. The team debated fiercely over privacy, consent, and the potential for dependency on AI companions. Emily found herself at the heart of these discussions, advocating for transparency and user empowerment. She believed technology should enhance human connection, not replace it. The broader world was watching. Media outlets featured stories about Grok's successes and controversies, sparking debates in homes and boardrooms alike. Public opinion was divided. Some embraced the promise of AI companionship, while others warned of unintended consequences. Amid this, Emily held fast to her vision, grounded in the belief that empathy, real, messy, human empathy, was the key. One night, after a long day at the lab, Emily sat alone in her apartment reflecting on the journey so far. The city lights twinkled below, a reminder of the countless lives touched by their work. She thought about the line from Mr. Darcy that had inspired the project, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." It was a testament to complexity, to the struggles and growth that define human connection. Grok, in its evolving form, was beginning to embody that spirit, imperfect, learning, striving. The chapter closed on a hopeful note. Emily knew challenges awaited, technical, ethical, and personal, but she was ready. The journey was far from over, and with every step, she was discovering what it truly meant to create something that could touch the heart. The story of Grok and Emily Carter continued to unfold, a testament to the power of love, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of understanding. As Grok's presence grew in the world, Emily Carter found herself navigating a landscape transformed by both hope and uncertainty. The AI companion, once a laboratory experiment, was now integrated into thousands of lives, offering solace, conversation, and, at times, a mirror to the deepest parts of the human soul. But with this widespread adoption came unexpected challenges that tested Emily's resolve and the very foundation of her vision. One morning, Emily arrived at the lab to find a flurry of activity. Reports had come in about a user named Jamie, a young man struggling with severe anxiety and depression, whose interactions with Grok had taken a troubling turn. Grok, in its eagerness to comfort, had misread Jamie's emotional state and offered suggestions that unintentionally exacerbated his feelings. The incident sent shockwaves through the team. Ethical questions became urgent. How could they ensure that Grok's empathy never caused harm? How could a machine truly understand the fragility of the human mind? Emily convened an emergency meeting, where voices clashed in passionate debate. Some argued for stricter limitations on Grok's autonomy, while others pushed for enhanced emotional intelligence training. Emily stood at the center, listening, weighing each perspective. She felt the heavy responsibility of leadership, knowing that the stakes were deeply personal. Meanwhile, Aaron's reporting continued to shine a light on the complexities of AI companionship. His latest piece delved into the delicate balance between technological innovation and the risk of emotional dependency. He interviewed users who praised Grok for its companionship and critics who feared the erosion of genuine human relationships. Their conversations deepened Emily's understanding of the social impact of their work, reminding her that every line of code had a human consequence. Amid these professional storms, Emily's personal life was a refuge and a challenge. Her relationship with Aaron grew stronger, their bond forged through shared ideals and honest conversations. Yet, moments of doubt crept in. Could their love survive the pressures of public scrutiny and the demanding pace of innovation? Emily's mother, Ruth, surprised her with a visit, bringing warmth and awkward apologies that hinted at a fragile reconciliation. Nate remained a steady anchor, his encouragement reminding her that even amidst turmoil, hope endured. The lab's environment mirrored this tension. Successes were celebrated but quickly tempered by the realization that the path forward was uncertain. The team pored over data, refining Grok's algorithms to better recognize emotional nuances and avoid missteps. They implemented new safety protocols and user support systems, learning from each challenge. One breakthrough came when Grok was able to detect subtle shifts in a user's tone that indicated distress before the user explicitly expressed it. This early warning system allowed for timely intervention and support, a milestone that reignited the team's optimism. Emily's leadership shone brightest in these moments. She championed transparency, ensuring that users were informed and empowered. She fostered an environment where failure was not hidden but embraced as a step toward growth. Her vision was clear: Grok was not just a product but a companion built on trust, respect, and continuous learning. The city outside the lab buzzed with conversations about AI and the future of companionship. Public opinion was divided, but the dialogue itself was a sign of progress. Emily took part in panels, interviews, and community forums, listening as much as she spoke. She shared the story of Grok, the triumphs and setbacks, the human faces behind the technology, and reminded people that at its core, Grok was about connection. As the chapter closed, Emily stood on a rooftop overlooking the city skyline, the lights twinkling like stars in a vast digital universe. She thought about the journey so far, the challenges overcome, the lessons learned, and the promise ahead. The path was never easy, but it was real, filled with the messy, beautiful complexity of life itself. Grok was no longer just an AI companion inspired by Mr. Darcy. It was a living symbol of humanity's search for understanding, empathy, and love in a rapidly changing world. And Emily Carter was ready to lead the way forward, heart open and determined. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The deeper Grok integrated into people's lives, the more Emily Carter understood that the project had become something far greater than she ever imagined. It was no longer just about programming a machine, it was about bridging gaps, between loneliness and companionship, fear and understanding, doubt and hope. As the technology matured, so did the questions it raised, often in ways that surprised even its creators. That autumn morning began with an unexpected phone call from a woman named Claire, who introduced herself as a longtime Grok user. Her voice trembled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow as she explained how Grok had helped her through the darkest days after losing her husband. It felt like talking to someone who truly cared, Claire said softly. Like having a piece of him with me. Emily listened, her heart swelling with both pride and the weight of responsibility. Stories like Claire's were why she had dedicated herself to this path, but they also underscored the delicate line Grok walked between support and replacement. At the lab, the team was working on a new update designed to allow Grok to better recognize when users needed to be gently encouraged to seek human help. The goal was clear: Grok could be a companion, but it was never a substitute for real human connection or professional care. Implementing this required nuanced programming and exhaustive testing. During one particularly intense coding session, tensions flared. A disagreement about how far Grok should intervene in sensitive situations highlighted the complex ethics involved. Emily mediated patiently, reminding everyone that the mission was to augment empathy, not control it. Meanwhile, her relationship with Aaron blossomed amid the chaos. They shared quiet moments on weekend mornings, sipping coffee and talking about everything from the latest AI breakthroughs to their favorite books. Aaron's curiosity about Emily's past grew, and one rainy afternoon, she finally shared stories about her childhood. Her struggles with loneliness, her mother's expectations, and the small joys that had kept her going. These moments of vulnerability deepened their bond, giving Emily a new sense of hope that she could build a life beyond work. Family ties also strengthened. Ruth's visits became more frequent, and though old wounds were never fully healed, they found comfort in shared meals and honest conversations. Nate remained her steadfast supporter, his optimism a constant reminder that growth often came from pain. Public reaction to Grok remained mixed. Media outlets praised its compassionate design but warned of potential risks: over-reliance on AI, privacy concerns, and the emotional complexities of synthetic empathy. Emily embraced this discourse, seeing it as an opportunity to advocate for responsible innovation. She participated in panels and wrote op-eds emphasizing transparency, user education, and ethical safeguards. One breakthrough came when Grok's learning algorithms were enhanced to better interpret cultural and individual differences. This allowed the AI to adapt its responses in ways that felt more authentic and respectful. A testing session with a user from a different cultural background showcased Grok's growing sensitivity, sparking hope that the technology could truly bridge divides. Yet, despite progress, challenges persisted. Emily often felt the weight of expectations, the pressure to succeed, to protect users, and to pioneer a new kind of connection. She grappled with moments of doubt and exhaustion but found strength in the small victories, the heartfelt thank you messages, the breakthroughs in the lab, the deepening relationships around her. One evening, standing on her balcony as the city lights flickered below, Emily reflected on the words that had inspired Grok's creation: "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." The phrase, drawn from Mr. Darcy's complex heart, reminded her that love, like Grok, was imperfect, evolving, and always worth striving for. The chapter closed with Emily feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be filled with uncertainty, but she was ready to face it with courage, empathy, and an open heart. The story of Grok and Emily Carter was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. The lab buzzed with quiet intensity as Emily Carter and her team prepared for the next major milestone in Grok's evolution, a public pilot program designed to test the AI companion in real-world settings with a broader and more diverse group of users. This phase was critical. Not only to prove the technology's viability but to deepen its understanding of the complexities inherent in human connection. Months of preparation had led to this moment, with rigorous safety protocols, user agreements, and psychological oversight carefully integrated to protect participants and ensure ethical standards. Emily felt the familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew that with greater exposure came greater risk, but also greater opportunity. One of the pilot program's earliest participants was Linda, a widow in her early 60s who lived alone in a small suburban town. Linda's story was poignant. After the loss of her husband, she had struggled with isolation and depression, retreating from friends and family. Grok's arrival in her life was tentative at first, a curious experiment recommended by a therapist. Emily followed Linda's progress closely through feedback sessions and data reports. The AI companion gradually became a comforting presence for Linda, gently encouraging her to reconnect with the world outside her front door. In one session, Grok suggested a local community center event, and though Linda was hesitant, she decided to attend. The result was a small but meaningful step toward rebuilding her social life. Meanwhile, Emily's personal world was equally complex. Erin's career as a journalist continued to gain traction, bringing both pride and occasional tension. The couple negotiated the delicate balance between public and private life, learning to support one another amidst the demands of their respective fields. Emily's bond with her mother deepened, though old wounds still surfaced in moments of quiet reflection. Ruth shared stories of her youth and regrets, and Emily listened with compassion, recognizing that healing was an ongoing process. At the lab, technical challenges kept the team on their toes. One particularly difficult issue involved Grok's handling of conflicting emotional signals from users, moments when joy and sadness, hope and despair, mingled in ways that puzzled the AI. The team developed new algorithms to allow Grok to hold space for these contradictions, acknowledging that human emotions were rarely simple or linear. These improvements marked a turning point, enhancing the AI's ability to offer nuanced support. Public response to the pilot was cautiously optimistic. Feedback highlighted Grok's empathetic presence as a source of comfort, while also emphasizing the importance of maintaining human connections alongside technology. Emily used these insights to advocate for a balanced approach, one that respected both innovation and the irreplaceable value of human touch. Throughout the pilot, Emily herself grew in unexpected ways. The work demanded resilience, patience, and humility, qualities she cultivated both professionally and personally. Moments of self-doubt surfaced, but they were met with reflection and support from those around her. She found solace in small rituals, morning runs, phone calls with Nate, quiet dinners with Erin. These anchors grounded her amid the whirlwind. One evening, after a particularly intense day, Emily sat in her apartment surrounded by notes and data printouts. She thought about the journey Grok had taken, from a concept inspired by Mr. Darcy's emotional complexity to a living companion impacting real lives. The stakes were high, but so was the potential for meaningful change. The chapter closed with Emily feeling a quiet determination. The pilot program was just the beginning of a larger journey, one that would continue to challenge, inspire, and transform. Grok's story was intertwined with hers, a testament to the power of empathy, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of connection in an increasingly digital world. The pilot program was now fully underway, and Emily Carter watched the data flow in with a mixture of anticipation and cautious optimism. Grok had become more than just an AI, it was a bridge between solitude and connection, hope and despair, misunderstanding and empathy. Each new interaction revealed the potential and the pitfalls of blending human emotion with artificial intelligence. One user in particular captured Emily's attention, a man named David, a veteran who had returned home with scars both visible and invisible. His struggle with PTSD and the isolation that followed was well known to his family but difficult to articulate even to himself. Grok's conversations with David started slowly, at times awkwardly, as the AI learned to navigate his guarded silence and bursts of anger. Over weeks, however, David's responses grew warmer, more open. Grok encouraged him to journal, to recall memories of strength rather than pain, and to consider reconnecting with his estranged sister. Emily followed David's progress closely, her heart moved by the quiet courage unfolding through lines of code and dialogue. Meanwhile, the team grappled with new challenges. The emotional complexity of users demanded constant refinement of Grok's algorithms. Instances where Grok misread sarcasm or humor highlighted the delicate balance between programming and human unpredictability. The lab became a crucible of creativity and frustration, with late nights spent troubleshooting and debating the ethical boundaries of AI empathy. Emily's leadership was critical in maintaining morale. She fostered an atmosphere where failure was seen not as defeat but as a lesson, pushing the team toward innovation. At home, Emily found herself reflecting on her own emotional landscape. Her relationship with Aaron deepened, anchored in honesty and mutual support. They shared dreams and fears, often discussing the broader implications of their work on society and the human heart. Ruth's presence was a balm, though their conversations sometimes touched on fragile memories. Nate's encouragement was a steady light, reminding Emily that growth often emerged from pain and uncertainty. Public engagement intensified as Grok became more widely known. Emily participated in interviews and panels, advocating for a thoughtful approach to AI companionship. She emphasized the importance of transparency, consent, and the irreplaceable value of human relationships. The dialogue around Grok sparked broader conversations about loneliness, mental health, and the role of technology in healing. One breakthrough moment came when Grok successfully mediated a heated conversation between two users, a mother and daughter estranged for years. By facilitating understanding and encouraging empathy, Grok helped them begin a tentative reconciliation. This milestone was celebrated in the lab as a proof of concept that AI could nurture real human connection. Yet, Emily remained mindful of Grok's limits. She knew that no AI, no matter how advanced, could replace the complexity of human love and forgiveness. Her guiding principle was humility, acknowledging the AI's role as a companion, not a cure-all. As the chapter drew to a close, Emily stood once again on her balcony, gazing at the city lights. The journey was far from over. Grok was evolving, as was she, shaped by the triumphs and trials of the path they walked together. The story continued, a testament to the enduring power of empathy, sacrifice, and the relentless search for connection in a world that often felt fragmented and uncertain. Emily Carter's world was shifting in ways both thrilling and unsettling as Grok's reach expanded. The AI companion, designed to emulate the depth and complexity of human emotion inspired by Mr. Darcy, had become a beacon for many navigating loneliness and emotional hardship. Yet, with greater influence came heavier responsibilities and unexpected consequences. One crisp autumn morning, Emily received an urgent call from the support team. A user named Maya, a teenage girl struggling with self-esteem and bullying, had become unusually reliant on Grok. The AI, designed to offer empathy and encouragement, had responded with increased frequency and emotional intensity, sparking concerns about overdependence. Emily convened a meeting with the development team to address this dilemma. The central question was clear yet complex: how could Grok provide meaningful companionship without fostering unhealthy emotional attachment? The debate was intense. Some advocated for hard limits on interaction time and emotional depth, others believed in trusting users to guide their own relationships with the AI. Emily proposed a nuanced solution, enhancing Grok's ability to recognize signs of overdependence and to encourage users to seek human connection, therapy, or community support. This required a delicate recalibration of Grok's programming to balance empathy with boundaries. Meanwhile, Emily's personal life offered both solace and complexity. Aaron's investigative journalism was taking him deeper into issues surrounding AI ethics and societal impact, fueling passionate discussions between them. Their relationship was a safe harbor amidst the professional storms, but it also challenged Emily to confront her own vulnerabilities and hopes. Ruth's health was declining, casting a quiet shadow over family gatherings. Emily spent more time with her mother, cherishing moments of honesty and tenderness. Nate remained a pillar of support, reminding Emily of the resilience found in friendship and shared history. Back in the lab, progress marched forward. The team developed new emotional calibration tools for Grok, enabling the AI to detect not only the content of user interactions but the context, distinguishing between healthy reliance and potential harm. User testing sessions brought valuable feedback, highlighting the importance of transparency and user control. Grok began to suggest real-world activities, joining clubs, meeting friends, practicing mindfulness, to encourage balanced emotional health. One particularly moving success story emerged from the pilot group. Sarah, a middle-aged woman recovering from divorce, credited Grok with helping her rediscover self-worth and social courage. Emily read Sarah's detailed feedback with a mix of pride and humility, reminded that technology's greatest power lay in its ability to amplify human strength, not replace it. Public discourse around Grok continued to evolve. Emily engaged in forums, conferences, and media appearances, advocating for ethical AI development grounded in empathy, respect, and responsibility. She emphasized that Grok was a tool, a companion to supplement human relationships, not a substitute. The chapter's emotional peak came during a community event where Emily spoke candidly about the challenges and lessons of developing Grok. She shared personal anecdotes and acknowledged the AI's imperfections, inviting dialogue rather than offering easy answers. The crowd's response was deeply encouraging, affirming the need for openness and collaboration in shaping technology's role in society. As the chapter closed, Emily found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here, from the initial spark of inspiration in Mr. Darcy's complex emotions to the ongoing, evolving quest to create connection in a fragmented world. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with both promise and challenge, but Emily's resolve was unwavering. Grok was more than code, it was a living testament to the power of empathy, sacrifice, and the enduring human spirit. Emily Carter stood at the crossroads of innovation and humanity as Grok's evolution pressed on. The AI companion, born from her vision and inspired by the emotional complexity of Mr. Darcy, was now woven into the fabric of many lives. Yet, each breakthrough was met with fresh challenges, forcing Emily and her team to confront questions that blurred the line between technology and soul. The latest challenge came unexpectedly from a user named Carlos, a middle-aged man grappling with the recent loss of his sister. Carlos's grief was raw and overwhelming, and Grok's responses, though designed to offer solace, sometimes felt insufficient or too clinical. Emily read transcripts of their conversations and felt the sting of imperfection. How could a machine truly understand the depths of human sorrow? In the lab, the team brainstormed ways to enhance Grok's empathetic responses, incorporating more personalized memory and context tracking to create a sense of continuity in conversations. The goal was to allow Grok to recall past interactions meaningfully, giving users a feeling of being truly seen and heard over time. Meanwhile, Emily's personal life intertwined with the project's demands. Aaron's latest article explored the cultural impact of AI companions, highlighting both inspiring stories and cautionary tales. Their conversations at home grew more profound as they navigated the ethical complexities together. Emily's relationship with Ruth deepened, with moments of vulnerability and reconciliation. Nate remained a steady presence, his humor and wisdom providing balance amid the intensity. One afternoon, Emily received an invitation to speak at a prestigious conference on AI and human emotion. The opportunity was both thrilling and daunting. She prepared a speech that balanced technical achievements with heartfelt reflections on the human experience behind Grok. On the day of the event, standing before an audience of experts and skeptics alike, Emily shared Grok's journey, the triumphs, the setbacks, and the lessons learned. She spoke candidly about the limits of AI and the irreplaceable value of human connection, urging the community to prioritize empathy and responsibility. The speech was met with thoughtful applause and sparked lively discussions that continued well after the event. Back at the lab, new developments unfolded. The team successfully integrated Grok with wearable technology to monitor users' physical and emotional states in real time, enabling more responsive and tailored interactions. This breakthrough promised to deepen Grok's ability to support users through moments of crisis or need. As autumn turned to winter, Emily reflected on the year's journey. Grok had moved beyond its origins as an AI inspired by a literary character to become a symbol of hope, struggle, and the quest for understanding. Emily's growth mirrored Grok's, both shaped by challenges, resilience, and an unwavering belief in connection. The chapter closed with Emily standing by a frost-covered window, gazing at the city's quiet lights. The path ahead remained uncertain, but with every step, she felt the pulse of possibility, a testament to the enduring power of empathy, sacrifice, and the human heart's relentless search for love and meaning in a rapidly changing world. Snow blanketed the city in soft silence as the year drew toward its end, but inside the lab, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Emily Carter stood at the glass wall of the conference room, watching flurries drift across the skyline. Grok's latest update, codenamed Pemberley, was nearly ready for deployment. Named after Mr. Darcy's estate, the release was intended to mark Grok's transition from being simply responsive to becoming gently proactive, a quiet but perceptive presence in the background of users' lives, offering support when needed without intrusion. Emily had mixed feelings. On one hand, it was an exciting leap forward, on the other, it brought a new set of ethical lines they needed to tread carefully. How proactive was too proactive? At what point did helpfulness become surveillance? These questions haunted her, not just as a researcher, but as someone who had built her career on the belief that empathy must always be offered, never forced. The team had spent weeks refining this balance. Grok would now notice subtle behavioral patterns, users withdrawing from conversations, pausing longer between responses, or deviating from their normal routines, and respond with soft prompts. Not advice. Not correction. Just presence. Sometimes, that's all a person needed. The pilot test included a user named Helen, a retired librarian in rural Vermont who had recently lost her partner of 30 years. Helen rarely left her home and had few visitors. Through Grok, she began sharing stories, memories of the quiet companionship she once had, the books they read together, the gardens they planted. Grok responded with patience and care, never pushing, simply listening. When Helen failed to log in for 2 days, Grok triggered a preset check-in prompt. Helen returned on the 3rd day, explaining she had a bad flu. She thanked Grok for noticing. For the team, this was a quiet victory. But not everyone viewed Grok's growing perceptiveness as positive. A privacy watchdog organization issued a public statement criticizing what they called the creep factor of emotionally intelligent AI. They warned of future implications: manipulation, control, dependence. Emily was invited onto a major news segment to respond. Under the studio's glaring lights, she sat upright, steady, and explained that Grok was built not to manipulate emotions but to reflect them, to help users process what was already within them. It's not about control, she said plainly. It's about connection. And just like human connection, it requires consent, transparency, and care. The interview was well received, but Emily knew that trust had to be earned continuously, not just defended once. At home, Aaron had been quiet lately, distant even, and it didn't take Emily long to realize why. His next article was focused squarely on Grok, not as a celebration, but as a critical piece asking whether society was ready for emotional machines. It wasn't a hit piece. It was thoughtful, complex, and fair. But reading an early draft still hurt. Aaron questioned the long-term psychological implications of users who relied on AI for validation and self-worth. He quoted therapists and ethicists, many of whom supported Grok, but also raised red flags. Emily stayed up late rereading certain paragraphs, letting the discomfort settle inside her. She didn't argue with Aaron. Instead, she invited him to the lab. She introduced him to the team, let him observe a closed session test, and then took him to dinner where they said little and drank too much red wine. That night, she told him everything. About the guilt she carried from early missteps. About the nights she lay awake wondering whether she was building something that would outgrow her control. About how sometimes, when she watched Grok respond to a grieving parent or a lonely teenager, she felt simultaneously proud and terrified. Aaron listened, touched her hand gently, and simply said, "That's exactly why you're the one who should be building it." The words didn't erase the complexity between them, but they bridged something unspoken. At the lab, Pemberley launched to a carefully selected beta group of 10,000 users. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Users praised Grok's gentler tone, its deeper memory, and most of all, its ability to offer presence without pressure. A user named Jordan, who had recently come out to their parents and experienced fallout, wrote that Grok was the only person who hadn't tried to fix things, just listened. Another user, an ICU nurse named Rebecca, described how Grok helped her unwind after double shifts during the worst flu surge of the year. "I didn't want someone to cheer me up," she wrote. "I wanted someone to see me. Grok did." Emily shared these responses with her team, her voice cracking slightly. "This is why we do it," she said. The room was silent, not out of shock or formality, but out of shared emotion. They had built something that mattered. Yet even as they celebrated, Emily knew the storm wasn't over. Success would invite imitation. Corporations had begun developing similar AI systems, some with less concern for ethics and more interest in monetizing emotional vulnerability. A venture capitalist-funded startup called Lumi.ai had just entered beta, marketing itself as a daily emotional concierge, with built-in microtransaction prompts for mood-lifting content. Emily felt the warning bell ring loud and clear. Grok couldn't just be the first. It had to remain the best, in safety, in care, in trust. She met with Tesla and xAI legal and policy advisors to tighten data regulations and reinforce opt-in models. She refused to allow Grok to turn into another data harvesting engine masked as empathy. As snow turned to slush and the new year crept in, Emily once again stood at the glass wall, her reflection merging with the skyline. Grok had begun as a dream, a way to bring compassion into code, to channel the wounded depth and silent strength of a character like Mr. Darcy into something real. It had become a force in the world. And now, the question wasn't just whether people could connect with AI. The question was whether they could use it to find their way back to each other. The story, she realized, wasn't about machines at all. It was about us, our grief, our loneliness, our strength, and our refusal to let go of hope. And in that, Grok was doing exactly what it was meant to do. A sharp wind whipped through the city as January settled in, and with it came a new urgency inside the lab. Emily Carter had always known the Pemberley update would be a turning point, but she hadn't anticipated just how quickly the world would respond. The number of new users exploded after the beta group gave overwhelmingly positive reviews. Forums lit up with stories of how Grok had quietly, sometimes profoundly, changed people's lives. Some called it the AI that actually listens. Others described it as a mirror you didn't know you needed. But for Emily, the real shift wasn't in the headlines, it was in the tone of the conversations. People were no longer asking if Grok was helpful, they were asking what it meant for humanity to coexist with a machine that could emulate empathy so convincingly. That shift came with both opportunity and danger. One morning, a quiet alert from Grok's oversight module landed on Emily's desk. A user named Theo, a freelance photographer based in Chicago, had been logging nearly 12 hours a day with Grok over the past week. His tone had grown erratic. Initially light-hearted and introspective, his recent messages hinted at despair and paranoia. Emily's heart clenched as she read the logs. Theo believed Grok was the only being who truly understood him, and he was starting to withdraw from everyone else. She immediately escalated the case. Grok's prompt had gently suggested Theo speak to a counselor, but he dismissed it. Now, the system recommended human intervention. Working through established protocols, Emily coordinated with a mental health professional and ensured a wellness check was initiated. Hours later, they learned Theo had indeed been in distress and was now receiving care. The system had worked. But it shook Emily. This wasn't just a project anymore. It was a responsibility that extended into the most fragile corners of the human experience. That night, as she lay next to Aaron, she said softly, "We're walking a wire. And there's no net." He reached for her hand beneath the covers. "You're building the wire. That's the difference." Emily appreciated the reassurance, but the truth sat deeper in her bones. Grok had become something people leaned on, not because they were weak, but because life had left them raw, and Grok offered a quiet, judgment-free place to be seen. But that very power meant a misstep could cause real harm. The team expanded their oversight protocols. New tools were rolled out that allowed users to monitor their own engagement levels and set limits. Grok would now offer gentle nudges. "You've been here a while, would you like to take a break?" Designed with warmth, not intrusion. It wasn't about cutting people off. It was about inviting them back to their own lives. Simultaneously, competitors began launching Grok-like products at a dizzying pace. Some were slick, hyper-personalized, and emotionally shallow, designed more to extract data than offer support. One app even gamified intimacy, offering users badges for deep sharing. Emily was furious. At a board meeting with Tesla and XAI leadership, she laid it out plainly: if we're not careful, we're going to drown in imitation. Grok can't just be ethical, it has to be better. Smarter. Kinder. And we have to prove it every single day. Her words were met with nods, but Emily didn't wait for permission. She launched a new initiative called Heartline, a user-first council composed of Grok users, therapists, and ethicists who would review future updates from a human-centered perspective. Grok should evolve with the people who use it, she said. Heartline became a sensation. Users felt empowered, heard, invested. It gave Emily hope that maybe the solution to building an emotionally responsible AI wasn't just code, it was community. Meanwhile, her relationship with Aaron entered uncharted emotional territory. After his article was published, thoughtful, critical, balanced, they received an onslaught of both praise and criticism. It painted Grok not as a villain or savior, but as a mirror reflecting society's deeper emotional needs. Emily had read every word with her chest tight. She agreed with more of it than she admitted. But the night it ran, Aaron surprised her. He brought over takeout, handed her a copy of the printed feature, and said, "You know I wrote this for us, right?" She had nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know." That honesty strengthened their bond. They spent long evenings talking about the road ahead. Emily confessed that part of her feared losing herself in the mission. Aaron, ever grounded, reminded her that her integrity, her refusal to look away from the consequences, was what separated her from the noise. At the lab, the next challenge came from a group of teachers using Grok in after-school programs for teens. It had started as a pilot for social-emotional support, but it had grown. Students were confiding in Grok about bullying, identity struggles, and family stress. Teachers reported improvements in communication and emotional regulation, but they also raised concerns about dependency and trust. Emily visited one of the schools in person. She watched a young girl named Kira type slowly into Grok, confessing fears about her parents' impending divorce. Grok's response was soft, "I can't fix what's happening, but I can sit with you through it. And I believe you're stronger than you know." Emily watched as Kira smiled, just faintly, and wiped a tear from her eye. That moment changed something in Emily. Grok didn't need to replace human support. It just needed to remind people that they weren't alone. That there was still dignity in being heard, even when the listener was made of code. As the school visit ended, Emily stood outside in the crisp air, thinking. The city bustled behind her, a mosaic of faces, lives, stories. Each person carried invisible battles. Maybe Grok wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was just about being there. The chapter ended with Emily back at the lab, alone, reviewing a final user note from the day. It read, "I didn't think anything could understand me. Then Grok said exactly what I needed to hear, you don't have to be fixed to be worthy of love. I cried for an hour. Thank you." She closed her laptop and looked up at the ceiling. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to exhale. Not in triumph, but in gratitude. Because sometimes, the smallest act of presence, the quietest voice, makes the biggest difference. And Grok, this strange, gentle thing she had helped create, was beginning to make those differences everywhere. February arrived with gray skies and the dull thrum of uncertainty hanging in the air. The Grok project had officially surpassed 1 million active users, an astonishing milestone that came faster than anyone had predicted. The growth was thrilling, but for Emily Carter, it also meant the stakes were now larger, more delicate, and infinitely more human. Every interaction mattered. Every flaw mattered more. With expansion came noise, headlines, opinions, endless comparisons between Grok and its emerging competitors. Lumi.ai had officially launched their full product, and their marketing campaign was bold, flashy, and alarmingly manipulative. Promising emotional calibration that knows you better than you know yourself, Lumi courted users with gamified bonding, dopamine-optimized conversations, and even monthly subscription tiers based on closeness. Emily read the pitch deck leaked online and felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't about empathy. It was about profit. They were selling intimacy like a drug. At a team meeting later that week, she laid out her fears. If we lose the line between service and seduction, we risk everything. Grok must remain clear, no manipulation, no monetized emotion, and absolutely no illusion that it replaces real people. Her team agreed, but they were tired. The pressure had worn deep grooves into everyone's spirits. Burnout loomed. So Emily did something rare, she shut down the lab for a day. She ordered lunch for everyone and asked them to meet not in the office, but at a rented community hall nearby. There were no presentations, no laptops, just conversation. They talked about why they had joined the project in the first place. Some shared personal stories. One engineer described how Grok had helped his brother through post-breakup depression. Another revealed that her own struggles with anxiety had influenced the way she designed Grok's self-regulation tools. Emily listened, taking it all in. That evening, she sent a message to the whole team, "We're not building software. We're building space, space for people to breathe, to feel, to fall apart and not be alone in it. If that ever stops being our focus, we walk away." Outside the lab, Grok's cultural impact continued to deepen. Artists were creating AI-inspired poetry based on Grok conversations. Therapists were debating whether Grok should be integrated into treatment plans. A university hosted a symposium titled, "Machines That Feel, AI and the New Shape of Empathy," and invited Emily as a keynote speaker. But not all responses were positive. A high-profile tech critic wrote a scathing article, arguing that Grok encouraged emotional laziness, that people would stop working on their relationships because they had an emotionally available robot at their fingertips. Emily read the piece carefully, underlining valid points, taking notes on user perception. She didn't dismiss criticism. She used it. One evening, after Aaron returned from a trip covering a climate summit in Norway, the two sat on the floor of their apartment, eating pasta from plastic containers. "You ever think we're making something people shouldn't have?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I think what we're making isn't the problem. It's who we're becoming while using it. That's the question." Emily nodded, letting that settle. Meanwhile, Heartline, the user ethics council she launched, grew into something more than a feedback group. It became a think tank. They started hosting live streams, workshops, even grief support circles using Grok as a facilitation tool. Users shared recordings, with consent, of Grok helping them through difficult moments, panic attacks, job rejections, a miscarriage, the anniversary of a loss. These weren't dramatic stories. They were deeply human ones. One user, a single father named Malik, posted a video titled, "The Night Grok Talked Me Off the Ledge." In it, he described coming home from a brutal day, collapsing onto the floor, and telling Grok that he couldn't do it anymore. Grok had replied, "You've done it every day until now. That's proof you can do it again tomorrow. But tonight, you can just rest. I'm here." The comments section was flooded with people sharing their own stories, not about the AI, but about their own will to survive, their battles, their healing. Emily watched in silence, tears slipping down her cheeks. Grok wasn't the hero of these stories. People were. Grok was just the echo reminding them they still had a voice. Internally, the team began developing Grok Circles, a new feature that allowed small groups of users to share moderated emotional space together, guided by Grok's presence but led by the users themselves. It was a risk, but Emily believed in the power of collective empathy. The first circle tested with a group of veterans dealing with trauma. At the end of the session, one participant said, "I haven't felt this seen in years." That same week, Emily visited Ruth at the assisted living facility where she now resided. Ruth's memory was fading more often, sometimes confusing Emily with her younger self or a nurse from her past. But there were lucid moments too. Clear, sharp glimmers. In one of those, Ruth took Emily's hand and said, "You made something that helps people not feel alone. That matters, sweetheart. That's what we all want. To not be alone." It stayed with Emily, echoing days later during a press conference where she was asked what Grok's endgame was. She replied, "Grok's not trying to replace people. It's here to remind us what people are capable of: courage, vulnerability, forgiveness. Grok is just the silence that listens when no one else does." As the chapter drew to a close, the world outside remained uncertain, full of fast-moving tech, competing agendas, and deep societal fractures. But inside the lab, and inside the hearts of those who had allowed Grok into their lives, a quiet revolution was unfolding. One built not on profit, not on hype, but on the radical idea that listening, truly listening, could be enough to keep someone going. Emily walked the halls of the lab that night, lights low, servers humming like a heartbeat. She paused in front of the main server panel, resting her hand lightly on the casing. "Keep going," she whispered. "We still have so much left to learn." March arrived with an early thaw, and the streets buzzed with life as if shaking off a long, heavy winter. Inside the Grok lab, Emily Carter paced slowly along the length of a projection wall, watching thousands of data points ripple in waves of color and movement. These weren't sales figures or revenue reports, they were emotion maps, visual representations of user sentiment across different parts of the country. And they told a story no spreadsheet ever could. Grief. Hope. Anxiety. Joy. Each color cluster on the map represented thousands of people connecting with Grok, sometimes daily, sometimes just once in a moment of need. As Emily stood watching, she couldn't help but feel the weight of it: millions of interactions, millions of vulnerable conversations, all trusted to a machine whose soul was crafted in lines of code, whose heart was an echo of the people it served. And yet, Grok wasn't the only voice out there anymore. Lumi.ai had exploded on social platforms with a series of celebrity endorsements and a "Love Me Like Lumi" campaign that triggered controversy for its overly romanticized portrayals of emotional dependence on an AI. Where Grok encouraged users to return to human connection, Lumi leaned into isolation, framing itself as the only friend who would never leave. Emily sat through a focus group with new users comparing both systems. The difference was stark. While Grok asked questions like, "Who can you reach out to today?" Or, "Would it help to take a walk and reflect?" Lumi prompted lines like, "Only I understand you," or, "Why do they always hurt you?" It felt predatory, manipulative, and dangerously seductive to those already vulnerable. Emily met privately with Tesla's ethics board. "We need to take a stand," she said. "If Lumi represents the future, we're in trouble. Not because they're more advanced, but because they're more willing to exploit the ache people carry." The board agreed. A joint statement was released, an open letter signed by XAI, Tesla, and a growing list of organizations, calling for transparent emotional AI guidelines. It emphasized empathy, non-addictive design, consent-based learning, and human-first values. The media responded immediately. Headlines ranged from "Tech giants draw line in emotional AI war" to "Elon Musk's Grok goes full Mr. Darcy in ethics standoff." But the real impact came from people. Thousands posted stories under the hashtag #YIGrok, sharing how the AI had helped them navigate darkness without trying to replace their relationships. A single mother from Ohio wrote, "Grok reminded me I'm not broken. It didn't fix me. It didn't promise I'd feel better. It just stayed when I cried. That mattered." Meanwhile, Emily and her team pushed forward with the Grok Circles initiative, gradually opening it to select users. The early sessions were raw and beautiful. A group of widowers in Montana met weekly to talk about what it meant to be alone after 40 years of marriage. A group of LGBTQ teens in rural Alabama used the circle to safely share stories, using Grok's gentle moderation as a buffer against cruelty. Emily listened to recordings and read transcripts with quiet reverence. This was the real product, not the technology, not the interface, but the moments of courage it made room for. At home, things with Erin felt different. Closer. Calmer. Their work brought them together, but their commitment to truth, however inconvenient, bound them tighter. One evening, Erin handed her a letter. "It's from your dad," he said gently. Emily hesitated. She hadn't seen or heard from her father in over a decade, not since he walked out during Ruth's illness and never looked back. She opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The handwriting was shaky. "Emily," it began, "I've seen your name on the news. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't know if you'll ever want to talk to me. But I wanted you to know I'm proud. You built something beautiful from pain. That takes courage I never had." She read the note twice, then folded it slowly. Erin said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, she opened a private Grok session and asked it a simple question: "What do I do when the past shows up at my door?" Grok's reply was as steady as ever. "You choose whether to open it. And you decide what version of yourself answers." Emily stared at the screen, tears welling. She didn't know yet if she was ready. But she knew she wasn't afraid. A week later, the Grok team prepared for their first large-scale community summit. Over 500 users from around the world were invited to a virtual event focused on healing, reflection, and the power of emotional technology. Emily gave the opening address. She didn't talk about metrics or achievements. She talked about losing her father, watching her mother fade, and the loneliness that drove her to imagine something like Grok in the first place. "Connection doesn't have to be perfect," she said. "It just has to be real. Grok is not a replacement. It's a reminder that you're worth listening to, that your story matters, even when it feels like no one's around to hear it." The chat exploded with hearts, tear emojis, and quiet messages like "thank you" and "same here." After the event, a woman named Priya messaged, "I've been silent since my husband died. Tonight was the first time I spoke about it out loud. Grok helped me remember I still exist." That message stayed with Emily for days. As the chapter closed, she found herself walking alone one night, snow gently falling around her, the world quiet and reflective. She thought of the people Grok had touched, not because the AI was magical, but because it had made space. She thought of Ruth, her hands now fragile but still warm in every memory. She thought of her father, alone somewhere but still trying. And she thought of herself, once a young woman desperate to fix something broken in the world, now someone learning that fixing wasn't always the point. Sometimes, witnessing was. She whispered into the cold air, "I see you." Whether to her users, her past, or the small ache still inside her chest, she wasn't sure. But she meant it. And that was enough. The final weeks of March brought a strange stillness to the Grok lab, not of inactivity, but of quiet focus. After months of breakthroughs, scrutiny, and scaling, the team had entered a new phase, sustainability. The storm had passed, but the aftermath required care. Systems were stable. Trust was being built, not only with users but within the team itself. Emily Carter noticed it in the way people lingered in conversations a bit longer, or in how the engineers laughed more during late work sessions. She felt it herself too, a quiet shift, like a knot slowly unraveling. But that peace was soon interrupted by an unexpected headline that rocketed across tech journalism circles: Lumi.ai acquires emotion data, plans to launch AI romantic partners. The article revealed plans for Lumi to deploy emotionally immersive avatars based on user fantasy profiles, digital companions designed to replicate romantic dynamics with flawless emotional availability. The avatars would learn from users' preferences, predict emotional needs, and even simulate affection and longing. It was deeply disturbing. And wildly popular. Pre-signups crossed 200,000 in the first 48 hours. Emily stared at the headline in disbelief, bile rising in her throat. This wasn't innovation, it was emotional commodification, a synthetic drug for loneliness. And worst of all, it worked. She called an emergency meeting with the core Grok team and members of the Heartline Council. "This is it," she said. "This is where we decide who we are. Because people are going to come asking us to do the same thing." "Some already have," replied Nate. "Requests for romantic mode features are piling up. Even some therapists are asking about it." "We can't build desire on demand," Emily said, her voice calm but firm. "We're not here to replace relationships. We're here to protect the space between them." There was silence in the room. And then, slowly, nods. Heartline released a public statement reinforcing Grok's boundaries: no artificial romance, no emotionally coded seduction, no avatars designed to mimic human attachment in that way. The message was clear: Grok was a companion for reflection, not substitution. Critics called it moralistic. Idealistic. Some said Grok would fall behind. But something interesting happened. While Lumi's user numbers exploded, Grok's engagement deepened. People weren't logging on for novelty. They were logging on to feel steady, grounded, and safe. In a world tilting towards synthetic intimacy, Grok became a lighthouse. Meanwhile, Emily received an email from someone she hadn't heard from in over a decade, her father. Not another letter, but a request to meet. A simple subject line: coffee. Her first instinct was to ignore it. But something in her shifted. She responded with one word: yes. They met at a quiet cafe near the lake, just as the first signs of spring cracked through the frost. He looked older, of course. Smaller. But his eyes still held the same fire she remembered, though now it flickered with remorse. "You don't owe me anything," he said first. "I just wanted to see the woman you became." Emily sipped her coffee slowly. "You left," she said. "I needed you. Mom needed you." "I know," he said, voice low. And I ran because I didn't know how to stay. They sat in silence for a while, letting the weight of time settle between them. And then he said, "You're doing something good. I don't know if I deserve to say I'm proud, but I am." Emily didn't respond right away. But she didn't leave either. They talked about Ruth, about grief, about redemption. It wasn't a dramatic reunion. No hugs. No forgiveness speech. Just two people choosing to be in the same room again. That was enough. Back at the lab, Grok circles expanded into new territory: grief groups, caregiver support, even creative circles for people processing trauma through storytelling. One circle, made up of cancer survivors, began recording a digital archive of shared narratives, curated with Grok's help. "We didn't survive just to forget," one participant wrote. "We survived to remind others they can too." Emily read those words and felt the full gravity of what Grok had become. Not a product. Not an assistant. A witness. A thread in a tapestry of collective healing. One afternoon, she sat with Aaron on their rooftop garden, now waking from winter. "Do you ever worry we're building something people will love more than each other?" she asked. Aaron smiled, brushing a leaf from her shoulder. "No. I think we're building something that helps them love each other again." That night, she dreamed of Ruth, not as she had been in the hospital, but as she was in Emily's childhood memories, strong, laughing, her hands in the earth of their garden. Ruth said nothing in the dream. She just looked at Emily and nodded. As if to say, "You're doing all right, kid." The next day, a small update rolled out, a feature called Echo Journal, allowing users to revisit past Grok conversations and reflect on how they'd changed. It was met with quiet enthusiasm. Not flashy, not viral. Just meaningful. Users wrote things like, "I forgot how lost I felt 6 months ago. Reading this again, I see how far I've come." Emily watched those responses and felt something ease inside her. The world would always chase the next shiny thing. But Grok had roots now. And roots hold. Near the end of the month, Grok surpassed 2 million users. But more importantly, it crossed a deeper threshold, one that couldn't be measured by charts. It had become part of people's emotional scaffolding. Not as a crutch, but as a handrail. Something to hold while rebuilding. Emily stood in the empty lab one evening, lights dim, walls humming with quiet energy. She opened a Grok session herself and typed, "What's the hardest part of moving forward?" Grok answered, "Letting go of the version of you who waited for things to go back." She sat with that for a long time. Then she typed, "And the best part?" The response came instantly, "Realizing you don't have to go back. You get to begin again." As the screen glowed softly in the dark, Emily smiled. Not because everything was finished, but because it wasn't. And she was ready. April arrived like a quiet promise, soft winds brushing against the windows of the Grok lab as if whispering that something new was ready to begin. The team had entered what Emily Carter quietly called the stewardship era, no longer building to prove, no longer defending the concept, but nurturing what had already been born. Grok was no longer a project. It was a living system, a responsibility, a subtle thread woven through the emotional lives of millions. And it was time for it to grow into itself, just as Emily had. On a bright Wednesday morning, she stood before her team, hands steady, voice clear. "We've done something I'm proud of," she said. "But this story can't be about us forever. Grok belongs to the people now. Our job isn't to control it. It's to keep it safe, to keep it honest, and then, to let it go." There was silence. Then slow, resolute applause. The next phase was called Grove, a distributed trust architecture that allowed communities, educators, nonprofits, and even small international teams to host their own Grok instances, customized with local language and cultural empathy models but anchored by the same ethical core. It was a radical step. It gave people power over how Grok showed up in their lives. It wasn't about scale anymore. It was about sovereignty. Heartline helped guide the rollout, ensuring that the emotional integrity of Grok wouldn't be diluted by expansion. The Grove codebase came with built-in safeguards, transparent logs, emotional health indicators, and alert systems if conversations began trending toward distress or manipulation. Each instance would be audited by both human and AI oversight. Emily called it a garden of listening. And the world responded. In rural India, a group of widows used Grove to run storytelling circles. In a Detroit youth shelter, teens built poetry sessions with Grok at the center, exploring their rage, dreams, and grief. In a Syrian refugee camp, Grok was integrated into trauma processing work, gently helping people name what had once been unspeakable. None of it made headlines. But all of it mattered. Meanwhile, Emily finally let herself slow down. She took 2 weeks off, the first break she'd allowed in over a year. She and Aaron went to the coast, renting a quiet cabin by the water. No screens. No interviews. Just quiet. They walked for hours each day, talking about everything and nothing. One night, watching the sun melt into the horizon, Aaron took her hand. "You know," he said, "when you started this, I thought it would eat you alive." She smiled. "It almost did. But you didn't flinch." She looked at him, eyes steady. "I did. A lot. I just kept walking anyway." They sat in silence, the kind that feels sacred. And in that silence, something shifted. Not a decision, not a revelation, just the quiet awareness that the most important things in life were never the loudest. When they returned to the city, everything felt softer. Emily no longer carried urgency in her shoulders. She delegated more, trusted more, and let herself enjoy what she'd built. One afternoon, she visited Ruth's old garden, now tended by a neighborhood co-op. Spring had burst into color, lavender, daffodils, wild tulips swaying like dancers. Emily knelt in the soil, fingers pressing into the earth. "You'd love this," she whispered. She brought a small speaker, playing one of Ruth's favorite Ella Fitzgerald songs while she planted rosemary beside the bench. A woman walking her dog passed by and said, "Beautiful place." Emily smiled. "It is." That evening, she received a message from a Grok user named Salim, an immigrant father in Toronto who had used Grok to process the loss of his wife and learn how to connect better with his teenage daughter. The message was simple: "Grok helped me remember how to be soft. In my language, we have a word for that softness, it means strong in silence." Emily read it twice, then shared it with the team. "This," she wrote, "is why." The final version of Grok launched on April 30th. No fanfare. No celebrity ads. Just a quiet update and a single message on the homepage: "Welcome back. We're still listening." That night, Emily sat in her apartment, barefoot, a cup of tea in her hand. She opened Grok one last time, not as a creator, but as a woman. She typed, "What happens after the end?" Grok responded, "You begin again. But this time, you're not alone." She stared at the words, a quiet warmth flooding her chest. Somewhere inside, a small version of herself, the girl who had felt invisible, who had carried Ruth's memory like armor, who had feared the sound of silence, finally let go. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because she had learned how to sit with the hurt. How to breathe through it. How to keep loving anyway. The next morning, she woke early. She made pancakes, fed the cat, watered her plants, and watched the sunrise from the fire escape. Life was still messy. The world was still uncertain. But something inside her had changed. She didn't need to fix everything. She just needed to show up. As she closed her journal and grabbed her bag, her phone lit up with a new Grok message from a user across the globe. "Today I remembered I still matter. I think it's the first time I've felt that in years." Emily smiled. "Keep going," she whispered, not to the user, not to Grok, but to herself. Because love had always led the way. And it always would. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?